Thanks for joining us. I'm Lauren Mortensen, Economic Development Planner with Region 12 Council of Governments here in Carroll. I'd also like to introduce Chris Whitaker, the Local Assistance Director, and Rick Hunsaker, the Executive Director here. Chris and Rick have spent a great deal of time and effort into making this small business webinar series. Please note we'll mute each attendee to limit background noise. The session will also be recorded for later viewing. This morning is the fourth in a series of webinars focused on assisting small business entrepreneurs and local development officials. The pandemic has affected each of us in different ways, especially our friends and neighbors in small businesses. Our goal is to assist with recovery and look towards the future growth and opportunities for all as we move forward. This webinar and future ones like it are made possible through special CARES Act funding provided to Region 12 from the Economic Development Administration. I'd also like to thank the 6 county economic development organizations, Audubon County Economic Development, Carroll Area Development Corporation, Chamber and Development Council of Crawford County, Greene County Development Corporation, Midwest Partnership, and SAC Economic and Tourism Development for their work in promoting this event and assisting in developing of these topics. There are more scheduled events on a variety of topics from growing your business with Google and economic development. The next webinar will be March 10th at 7:30 on website platforms and how to integrate e-commerce. I'm very pleased to introduce our presenters this morning and continue our webinar series, Darcy Swan and Michael Middler.
Yes.
Darcy,
you did good.
part-time business counselor with the Iowa Small Business Development Center and serves as the director for Enhance Hamilton County Foundation. Darcy is also the owner of In Tandem Marketing, where she focuses on working with small business owners. She has over 30 years of marketing experience with expertise in branding, social media, website development, public relations, event management, customer retention programs, and sports marketing. Michael is the Assistant Regional Director of Iowa Western Small Business Development Center and the founder of the Rule of Thumb for Business book series. Michael is an entrepreneurial executive who has over 25 years experience leading and developing managing growth. Michael is always looking up and beyond and has founded and led the Small Business Association of the Midlands, where he became a certified Gallup Entrepreneur Acceleration System Guide. So now, to educate us on why you need a website and tips to building a solid one, Darcy Swan and Michael Midler. Welcome.
Awesome. Thank you, Lauren, very much. Yeah, Michael and I are really excited about the series we've got kicking off today. I know 7:30 might be a little early for some of you, so we'll try and keep our conversation very highly caffeinated. One thing that I will tell you with these Zoom platforms, with presenters like Michael and I, it is really tough because we are engagers. We like to interact with the people that we're presenting to or sharing information with. And so if you do have a question, we're going to kind of throw the rule of thumb out of the wall where, you wait to the end. We want you to go ahead and in the chat box, put your question. And Michael's going to monitor for me when I'm presenting, and I'll monitor for Michael. And so we'll make sure that we're getting your questions answered as it relates to that section of the presentation. So, we may unmute you if it's a complicated question or what have you, but just let us know because we want to make sure this is kind of a dialogue. That's kind of how we present. But today we're going to talk about why you need a website and some keys to building a solid and effective one. So I'm going to go out here and hopefully share my screen. I hope. So, can you guys see that? Is my screen up?
There you go.
Yep. Ready to rock and roll. All right. So, again, if you have any questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat box. And I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Michael to kick us off. So I don't know, Michael, were you able to get in and remote control?
Let me see.
It's in the leader or the bar there with the pieces.
I'm not seeing the.
Do you see it? Let me see if I can. Oh, I'm going to give you control. There we go. I just did.
Okay. Thank you.
There you go. Awesome.
Good morning, everybody. Oh, wait, where's it going? Did
Hold
you?
on. Okay, hold
The
on.
great thing about technology.
It works great when it works, right?
Yeah.
So can you move it back? There you
There
go.
we go.
Oh,
Boy,
went
it
too.
is.
There you go. All
There
right.
you go.
All right, now we're ready.
Don't touch the button.
I won't
Telling
touch
you.
them, I promise.
So I'm going to try to, when I talk about things about, talking about websites and talking about building websites and things, I usually like to talk about what my clients have experienced, and what some of their big pain points are when they're building them. So I'm going to tell you some stories about some of those clients and what they do, and what I found that it was difficult for them to do when they're building them. But I think one of the things that we forget about is when you're a small business, you forget about why it's important to have a website. And one of the things I'm going to explain to people is I have lots of clients who will come in and they will tell me, oh no, I'm not going to build a website. I have a Facebook page, or I have an Instagram account, and I'm just going to use that to promote my business through that particular platform, or for that social media platform. So one of the things that I want to explain to everybody is that you have to remember that platforms like Facebook and Instagram are free for businesses, and therefore they are their platforms. And if they decide they don't like you, they can take you away. When you're building a website, of course, you're building the website and you're paying for it, and therefore it's your website and it's a place where you can be found online. It's always your particular website. So I think those other platforms are great, and I think that's what you use to drive people to your website. I think that's important. But I think that your website is basically where you need to go in and you need to kind of take control of it. So we put up here that customers are expecting that. Customers expect you to have a website. It's a place for your basically electronic brochure and for you to put as much information out there about your business. It's open, always open 24/7. So anybody can go out there and look at that particular website. You get to control the messaging of it. Your competitors are online, so you want to be aware of that. If you have a brick and mortar building, for example, Google doesn't let you use Google Local if you don't have a web platform. So they like to see a web presence out there, and for various reasons. Of course, one is they make money off of those people who advertise to get people to go to their website, but they also want to see you out there. They want to see you changing your website. They want to know that you're really in business and that you're working on things, and that's a good way for them to figure that out. And if you're going to get searched and you're looking for people to find you, that's they're going to go to Google or Bing or one of those search engines, and if you don't have a website, then it's going to be a little bit harder for them to find you. Good way to showcase what you offer, and it's a nice, easy way to make your clients have a way to contact you. I think that's really extremely important when you're on a website. And they can contact you via going to the website, or they can find your user information, which Darcy's going to talk about in a second, and find out how to get a hold of you. So I think those are some important things of just why you should have one. I know for a fact that a lot of people are daunted by the fact that either it's too expensive to have someone build one for me, or the DIY part of it scares people. But be assured that as you go through this presentation, Darcy is going to give you some great tips, right?
Right.
And we're a free resource, so you can always come to us, and we're always here to help and talk you through that if you decide to DIY it, or even if you decide to go to somebody else. We're always here to look over those contracts that you've made with a web development company to make sure that they're touching base and hitting all the key points. So just keep that in mind. One of the things about a website is understanding what your goals are and why you're creating the website, I think is really important. Are you creating it just to get information out there? Are you using it as an electronic brochure? Or is this going to be a lead generating software for you? Is this going to be something that when somebody goes out there, a box is going to pop up and it's going to say, hey, if you want this free download or you want this free gift, put in your name and information, and then it stores it in your website. I think those are things that you need to think about when you're building one. I also think you need to think about when you're looking at a platform, you need to think about whether or not you're going to do e-commerce on that, because that makes a huge difference in what type of website you should be, what platform you should be looking at purchasing. So I think one of the things people need to do is just sit down, and Darcy will talk a little bit about this, but sit down and write what's that goal that I want, what's my main goal of getting people there, and I always caution people to say, oh, it's to get more business. Websites are not build it and they will come things. You have to build it and then market it and get people to know what's out there. And of course, if you build it correctly, which Darcy will talk a little bit about when she talks about her section, when you build it correctly, that does help you with your search engine, that does help you get noticed, but you still have to do the marketing and promoting. So you need to kind of get your goals in order, figure out what that platform is going to be, or what that information is going to be, and what you want your website to do. And then you start from there to kind of decide what platform you're going to build, you're going to take, or you're going to use, and if you're going to DIY it, or you're going to call somebody and have them build it for you. But you guys have to know a goal of what you want to get from this website and what the goal of the website is.
And your website could have multiple goals too.
Oh yeah.
You know, it could be that you've got an e-commerce site, so there's your sales portion. You might have a newsletter that you're going to have people subscribe to. That's a lead generator. And it could just be informational too. So it could be everything, but you kind of want to rank it in importance, which we'll be talking about here in a minute. But it's important not just to have, just throwing up a website. You really need to think about it strategically. And I know that scares a lot of people, but if you don't think about it strategically, then it's not going to be effective. And so I think it's like Michael said, it's really important to sit down and think about, what do I want my website to do for me? And I've built websites for folks that actually the front end was more informational, but they had a very robust hidden section for employees. They had employee manuals. They had a calendar, like a work schedule calendar, things like that. So think bigger scope than maybe just what may work for customers. Think about how you can use it as an admin to make your life easier at the office as well.
And I also suggest that people don't get overwhelmed by the fact that you have to do it all at one time. I have many clients who come to me and they say, oh, I can't get it right, it's not perfect, and they never launch it. It takes them 6 months to launch the website. You can be working on pages and websites in lots of these platforms and have those pages hidden while you're working on them. And it's always good, in my opinion, it's always good to add additional things to your website over a period of time, because Google and Bing and these search engines see that you're actively doing stuff with that website, and it helps them understand that you're really in business, and it helps boost your analytics. So I always tell people, don't think you have to do it all in one night and then have launched the website the next morning. You could do it in phases, and you can phase out. When you're thinking of your goals, you might say, well, phase 1 is I'm just going to get my information out there. Phase 2, I'm going to add some lead generation stuff on there. And phase 3, I'm going to put some e-commerce stuff. And maybe not all my products are going to be up there at once. Maybe I'm going to add 5 this month and add the next 20 next month. So I always tell people to just, kind of take a step back, don't get overwhelmed, and just kind of get your ducks in a row and just get started. How's that? Get started.
Just start. Yeah.
Exactly. Did you wanna?
So I think Michael's kind of covered this. What do you want your visitors to do when they come to your site, and how are they going to accomplish that goal? And that leads directly into this section. So when I'm working with clients on websites, I always advise them, as with any marketing material, if you don't think about it strategically first, you just may have a beautiful piece of art, like a nice looking brochure. You might have a beautiful website, but if it isn't contain content that is effective, it's not going to work. And so I advise clients to sit down and make a list of what do you want on your website? What are the important things? And I approach it kind of in this, it's kind of a unique system. I think it helps visually have people understand how to categorize things, but I call it the file drawer method. So think of your navigation on your website like a file cabinet. And so each of the file drawers are going to be your main navigation, or what you may see across the top of your website or down the side, depending on where you have your navigation set up. So that main navigation would be your categories, your general categories. So one may be products. And then your file folders are what you would consider to be your drop downs or subcategories. So maybe it's the individual products that are listed. And if you need to go a little further down, then that you can do another drop down within those drop downs, and those would be kind of like the sheets in the file folder, so it's more detailed information. One rule of thumb though is you never want an online visitor to have to click more than 3 times to get to the information that they're looking for. And Michael and I were talking about this yesterday. When you're building a website, you want to think about your own experiences on websites that went very well and you enjoyed being on that site and making note of that. So we've all been on those websites where we had to keep clicking through and clicking through and clicking through, and you get really frustrated. So by taking a minute and kind of starting to, list out what you want and categorize it, you're making things very intuitive for an online visitor. So I've got an example to show. And this is a government site, so this is going to be way more robust than the majority of your websites. But what I wanted to show was here at the top, and hopefully you can see if I can get, you see my little guy there? Yep. So across the top, these would be your file folders. So we're looking at the government file folder. And so we've categorized everything that would fall under government. This is a city website, by the way. So we've listed everything that would fall under government. These would be, this would be the main file folder. These would be the drawer, and these would be the folders. Then over here, we have sheets. And we're going to see that some of these even break down further with more sheets in the folder. But it helps you build that hierarchy or that blueprint for your website, which is really important, because if your website doesn't have content or substance, it doesn't matter. No one's going to want to come to it. It may look really nice, but if they can't find information that is useful to them, they're not going to come and take a look at your website. So once you've developed your content, then we want to take a look at how we make your site come alive. How do we bring your brand to life and make your site visually appealing so that people are going to want to come and look for that content and have an enjoyable experience? So the goal is really to remain true to your brand. We want your site to be content rich, as we talked about. We want the website to meet your goals, which Michael addressed. We want it to be visually appealing and have a combination of color and fonts, heading styles, backgrounds, all of that to make it an enjoyable journey through your site. So the first thing I want to talk about is visuals. We've all been to those websites where the images are poor quality, or you couldn't really tell maybe what they had for sale. So you want to keep that in mind when you're looking at your visuals, because visuals help attract attention and engage the online visitor. They evoke emotion. Kids and puppies are the #1 images for getting people to pull on their heartstrings. So you want to keep that in mind, especially if you're like a dog shelter or something. You tend to show those puppy pictures and that, because it evokes emotion and gets people to donate to your cause. But it also helps you sell your product or your service. And you need to remember that photos have to answer as many questions as possible for that online visitor. Because as Michael said, your website's open 24/7, right? So you may have somebody who is shopping at 3 o'clock in the morning, and they may be taking a look at one of your products, but they aren't really sure, what it looks like. Your picture's not very good quality. So it allows you, if you can do multiple images, maybe you have to rotate your picture. Some of the website options, you can put your picture out there and they'll 360 it. But you want to make sure that you have as many images to answer those questions for that online visitor. Also, image size is really important, and we've all seen this in different formats, not just on web. In fact, I saw one yesterday on social media, a photo that was very distorted and it was hard to tell what it was. So when you're building your website, you need to keep in mind that images should be between 1,500 and 2,500 pixels wide, which is more like a 4:6 picture or a 5:7. You want them less than 2 megabytes because it will take less to load if they're lower than 2. 72 DPI. So we don't have to have a high resolution for these images because we're on the web. So it'll allow your site to load faster. And a PNG format is kind of the rule of thumb right now. It used to be back in the day, I'm dating myself here, but TIFF images were the big thing. But then they took so long to load. And so then they went to JPEGs, and JPEGs can get really large as well. So PNG formats are what we recommend using when you build your site. And this is a great image here. I wanted to show the difference between a high quality image and one that is distorted. And keep in mind that if you have a small image, you don't want to scale it large because it will be pixelated like what we see in this picture. And if you have a large image, you don't want to take it down too small because then it's going to be too big of a file and it'll take a while to load. So you can go in and change the resolution. There's a lot of different programs out there to do that. So you want to be mindful of all of that because that will cause a person to have a bad experience on your site if the images are blurry or they take a long time to load. Everybody wants everything right now, that we're in that instant gratification society. And so especially with as much traffic is online now due to the pandemic and a lot of businesses pivoting and getting online, you want to make sure it's an enjoyable experience because that reflects back on your brand. All right, so colors are important as well. So colors really reinforce your brand. So if you have a logo and you've got, some colors, you'll want to pull those through on the website and make that primary color more dominant. And then use those secondary colors as accent colors. You can create a palette to make your site more visually appealing using complementary and contrasting colors. You'll want to use the colors to call attention to specific information or to create visual separation. So I found this image and I thought it was a great way to show the different color palette here with the macarons. I think that's how you say that. But here's all the different colors. So I'd imagine if they're building a site, they're probably going to use one of these darker colors as a primary color and then bring in some of these other colors. Some of these are too light for web and would make it hard, but it could be a nice background color on a call to action button. And we'll talk about that here in a minute. But just find a complementary palette. So if you only have maybe 2 or 3 colors and you want to pull in another 1 or 2 colors, I hear you. I hear you. We had a comment come through. Now she wants a macaron. Great picture. Again, that evoked emotion, right? It got somebody to say, hey, I want one of those. The value of a good photo.
And with the correct call to action, she would now be buying those macarons, right? That's
right. She'd be placing her order right now. Good point. And colors also evoke different emotions, right? And so if you're a spa, you're not going to want your main color to be red because on this color palette here, we show that red really builds excitement and energy. And spas are very tranquil and peaceful. So we'd want to stick down here to the green and the blues where it's more about nature and healing, trust and peace. So that's important too, that your colors truly kind of represent your brand. And so you want to make sure that you're addressing that correctly as well. Right. Fonts also have a big difference or make a big difference on your website as far as the experience. So they do create personality. They do decide legibility and readability. It provides emphasis and it does create a hierarchy of content by scale. And so we're going to talk about that here in just a second. The best fonts to use when you build a website are the serif fonts. And they are, actually I have that backwards, don't I, Michael? Should be sans serif. Is that right? Sans serif or without the little, yeah. I have it backwards. So sans serif fonts are the ones that work better for web copy. So don't read what I have, listen to what I'm saying. But the sans serif fonts are those without the little accent marks. And so that would be like your Arial, your Helvetica, Century Gothic. There's a whole bunch of them, but it makes it easier to read, especially because the copy is smaller. And your serif fonts then have the little tilde on them. and they work better for larger things. So that you could bring in a serif font as a headline to bring in some personality and to create definition between headline and body copy. And it's important too that your font size, and I pay close attention to this because I'm getting older and my eyesight's not as good as it used to be. I have trouble with websites that have really small font on them. So you want to keep your fonts at 12 point or larger, depending on who your market is. And if you're engaging with a senior market, the minimum font size should be about 14 points. So that's really important to note as well.
Can I just say a couple of things? I've had clients who will, first off, a lot of the platforms that are out there, and we're going to talk a little bit about them later, and of course, a lot more about them next week. But a lot of the platforms out there will tell you, like, they'll have certain fonts uploaded because they know that those fonts work the best on websites. But I have some clients that have always, like, they wanted, oh, I want these very calligraphy looking fonts and they're really thin lines, and then when they put them on there, they're like, well, somebody can't read it. And I'm like, well, you need to not think like what you want and think like how what's practical for your customers to read it. And I think that's a little bit of what, when you're deciding colors and things like that, it's about the ease for the user on the end, not what you think is going to be best for your user, but what's actually best for them to read it and get that message that you're trying to get out there, so that they buy, or they, generate a lead for you, or whatever it is. So keep that in mind.
And those fun fonts could be used as an accent, but very, very sparingly. Like, don't use them. Maybe it's a sidebar on your website and you've got testimonials and you've got a fancy kind of fun font. But also some of those fonts are much harder to read. And you might want to, if you like that kind of scripted look, you may want to go and hunt through those different options and find one that is scaled down as far as detail to make it easier for your online viewer to read. So don't use them, but sparingly if you do.
And the web platforms, they have a list of fonts that are in there, but I know that you can upload additional fonts, and I'm always like, I'd be careful about doing that, because that may not be a font that a specific web browser supports, and so therefore that could be lost in translation as well. So I think you need to kind of be careful of that, and use the ones that usually these platforms put out there, because they know which ones are supported by other platforms or other browsers.
And your font on your website does not have to match the font in your logo. It doesn't. You can just find a complementary one, because really at the end of the day, you want your website to be one that people are going to want to go to, and when they're there, they have an enjoyable experience. And if you've got a kind of a unique font in your logo, it's going to be hard to replicate that. And like Michael said, some platforms don't translate over on the fonts, and you're going to get kind of gibberish where it's not going to appear correctly. So just find a really good font for your copy and leave your logo font as it is, and don't think that everything has to be matchy when it comes to that. This is a great example of color and font size to call emphasis to kind of hierarchy of information. So we've got a headline that is a larger font, and a lot of the platforms will already have built in what the headline font size will be and all of that. And then we've taken the body copy and we've turned it a secondary color to show the distinction between the two, so that it's not so difficult to read. This to me is a little bit hard to read, and my eye tends to go to option 1 because there is that distinction between the two. So think about using your colors and your fonts together to separate up that information. All right. So when you know what your website goal is, like Michael was talking about, is it to get someone to shop on your site? Is it to get someone to register for a newsletter or subscribe? Or maybe you have a process and you want them to get started. Maybe it's you want them to learn more. We have call to action buttons. And it really just encourages the visitor to do something. And so based off of what your goal is on the site is what you would want these call to action buttons to be. And so they can be within your color palette to, you know, blend in, but choose one that is more bright and that will stand out. And you can also go the opposite and find one that is a contrasting color that still works with the color palette, but maybe is only going to be used for those buttons because it calls attention to it. So these buttons are great to helping you kind of know or kind of drive traffic to help you utilize what the goal is of your website. So those are important to have too. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Yep.
I would also say that your call to actions, you know, you don't want to have 14 call to actions on one page.
No.
I think you really want to use them sparingly so that your client or that visitor to your website is drawn to that and actually does something with that button. And the more you put on there, the more they're like, well, what should I do? Should I hit the search or should I hit the contact? You know, if you have too many on there, it kind of diminishes from what you really want them to do. So I think the less is more in this situation, and putting them into and being really specific as to what you want that customer or that website visitor to do with that call to action. So
absolutely. Again, it goes back to the whole strategic thing of the website again. You know, what is it that I want my website to do? And then what can I do to help support, drive traffic to get them to behave the way I want them to? So, yep, good points. This next section is your story. And it used to be years ago, people would put out there about us. And you guys that already have websites may have about us. And kind of the trend right now is going towards the more your story. And websites, as in with any marketing material, are there to, at the end of the day, really build a relationship with your customer. People do business with people that they have an affinity with, they have a likeness with, they know, they trust them. And so it's important to put a human or a personalized element out there. And this is just a really great example of a your story. So this couple owns a restaurant and they really, you know, they share in their story why they started the restaurant. And they want to make everyone feel welcome. They want people to come to their restaurant to celebrate occasions. Their number one asset they know is their customer, and they're going to do everything they can to make their customers feel welcome and feel like family. So if you've never been to their restaurant and you were out checking out their menu, which a lot of us do. So if you're a restaurant, make sure you have a menu online. You've got people out there taking a look and they happen across this, they automatically have an expectation of what they can expect when they walk through the door. They're going to know that when they walk in that front door, they're expecting to be treated like family. And this particular couple does a phenomenal job of doing that. Their wait staff are just phenomenal. Their whole atmosphere is very homey and it kind of this whole eclectic kind of vibe. So it's important that you tell your story. You've got one. You know, why did you start your business? What prompted you to flip over an open sign or to take that first step and hopefully walk through the SBDC door and say, hey, I want to start a business, I need help. And so you really want to share that because you have a passion or should have a passion for what you're doing. And so creating your story is really important. And it doesn't have to be very long. As you can see, this is a very simplified version of why they do what they do and, you know, why they get up every morning and go into the restaurant and what's important to them. So make sure you put your story out on your website as well.
Yeah. And I'm going to reiterate the fact that it's short. You know, I think, you know, if you're a blog site and you're writing news articles, that's one thing. But when you're talking to people that want to come in and just find out what they're doing, what you're doing, I think keeping your content in those situations, you want to keep it very short and brief so that people can get it. I always say we can thank Twitter for that. 144 characters. We all have a short attention span. So I think these guys did a great job because they have just 2 paragraphs and it kind of gets right to the point of what their story is. So I think they did a great job.
Excellent. All right, now we're going to talk about contact information. And you're going to say, why are they talking to me about this? This is common sense. You'd be surprised at how many websites don't have contact information either easily available to their online visitor or at all. I mean, it's crazy. So we always encourage clients to put at least a phone number or email or a link to their contact us page, either in the header the footer, or both. So it's really, really important that you have contact information. You want to make it easy to do business with you, right? So, you know, the Contact Us page, if you are a brick and mortar, now if you're not, some of these aren't going to apply to you, but if you are, you should have your phone number. You should have your address. You should have an email address. You should have a Google map. And as Michael referenced earlier about Google, we're going to be talking all about the Google products that are free and how to claim your business on Google if you haven't done that here in a couple of weeks. But it's important to have the map so people can click it on and get directions to your location. And believe it or not, putting a photo of the outside of your business on your website can go great lengths in building that first initial impression of somebody a business who is welcoming people. I don't know about you, but there have been times that I have driven by businesses 2 or 3 times because the number wasn't outside, they didn't have proper signage, I couldn't find them. So if you have a photo of the outside of your business on your contact page, that's really important so that people can see that. Also, if you're a retail business, put your hours out there so people know when you're open and when you're not open. Nothing is more frustrating than going to a business that you think, well, it's a Saturday, they must be open, and they're closed. You know, and it's okay to have varied hours based off of your business and when demand is there for your business to be open, especially right now with the pandemic. Everybody knows hours are crazy. You know, they're not set routine as much as they had been prior to the pandemic. So it's important if you kind of have those hours that you put them out there. And, you know, in my opinion, I'd put them on the homepage, but also make sure they're on the Contact Us page. So they have everything they need to know about getting a hold of you, whether it's coming into the store physically, whether it's calling you, whether it's emailing you. They've got it all on one page. And that's really, I think, critical. And again, you'd be shocked at how many businesses make you really dig for it. Yeah. And those are businesses I don't want to do business with if they're not willing to, you know, help me with having their information.
So can I also make a comment on the hours thing? Because I've had this happen.
You go right ahead.
Even though I know these things, sometimes I forget. Your hours should also correlate with any of those other things that you have out there that also have hours on them. So if Facebook has the same hours, they should all have the same. I've had several people call that says, hey, your Facebook page said that you're open, but your website says you're not. So which is it? Which one is it? So Google, you know, Google, when you claim your Google local page, which Darcy will talk about later on in another presentation, you want to make sure that everything is consistent across all those platforms. And if you're going to be closed for Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, I would put that on your website and then go. And the other platforms, they actually give you you can go in at the beginning of the year and tell them that you're going to be closed on these days, and they'll automatically do it for you. But your website's not going to do that. So I would make sure that I would go into your website too as well and change those things so that there's some consistency. So you don't have people calling you every 5 minutes saying, hey, are you really open or not?
Yeah, good point. All right, well, I'm going to throw it back over to Michael, and we're going to go ahead and slide on into talking about a few of the more popular platforms.
Yeah, these are not the only ones out there, everybody, so understand that. I will tell you that one of the things that I do with my clients is there's a company called, or a website you can go to called top10reviews.com. You can certainly go out there and look them up and put in web platforms. But one of the things I tell people to do is I say, most of these guys that are on this page right now have a free version. And I know I use Wix and Weebly a lot, and I've used WordPress a lot. You can basically build your entire website before you actually launch it and try it out. You can get a free platform. And you know, I've used several of them to figure out which one I like to use the best. I would try one out, build a page or two in that one, and if it didn't seem like it was working for me, I try the next one. I currently do a lot of stuff in Wix. Wix is just an easy drag and drop type of a platform. They have different, all of these guys have kind of what they call plugins or apps that you can add to your platforms, like a restaurant app or an e-commerce app. They all have those particular things. Wix and Weebly, of course, is associated with Square. as in the POS system Square. So they integrate really well with Square. But I always encourage people to take a second, try these out. You know, when I was first started working for the SBDC, my boss would tell everybody to use WordPress, and I'm like, oh, well, why do you do that? And she says, well, because that's the one I know the best. Well, it's not about what I know the best as a counselor. It's about you as my client as to which one is going to work best for you and is as easiest for you to learn and do your job. And to run your business. So I always tell people, don't be afraid to try all of these for a little bit and see which one works best for you. And like I said, the great thing is you can build an entire website before you even launch it on these platforms for free before you actually pay for them. So I know Wix and Weebly offer the free option. I know WordPress does. I think Shopify does.
They do, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And it's important too, again, going back to what is the overall objective of your website? And taking a look at, as Michael said, the apps or the plugins that are available so that you can make sure that that website platform is a good fit for you. You know, if you're a restaurant, you have to have your menu out there, or at least a condensed menu, so that people can take a look before they even step foot through the door or before they even make plans with friends or family to go out to eat. Especially those with dietary restrictions or those that are looking to eat healthier, they're going to want to pop out and take a look. Well, there are a lot of different apps or plugins that can help you load a menu. So it's really important, again, to go back to know, why am I doing this website and what is the overall goal or intention of the site, to make sure that the platform helps you accomplish that.
And one of the things that, especially if you're a brick and mortar business and you're already using a POS system or you're using some type of merchant processing, not all of these platforms support all merchant processing. I found this out through trial and error. So, you know, if you have something set up like Square and then you build a platform and then that platform doesn't use Square as a merchant processing option, you know, then you're kind of stuck with having a second merchant processor, and then you've got two different merchant processors, and you're trying to figure all that out, which for your accounting person, and especially if it's yourself, would probably drive you crazy, you know, to track sales and those kind of things. So kind of look through, you know, if you're going to do an e-commerce site, you know, what platforms or which merchant processing platforms do they use. And even, I'm going to point this out, even if you have an app, like for example, Wix has a shopping app and they have a restaurant app. One of them supports all of the merchant processing, one of them doesn't. Okay, so you have to really even look inside the platform and the apps or the plugins to make sure that you're getting exactly what you need, and you know, and that it'll work with what some of the other systems that you may have already put in place.
So we did have a question come through, Michael. I'm going to shoot this over to you and let you address it, and I can chime in. Annette was asking, are we going to talk about hosting fees? So I'm going to let you take that one, and I can jump in.
Okay, so all of these platforms, I want to explain something that's a little different. Most of these platforms are web platforms that are built in and have hosting fees built in. So for example, Wix and Weebly. WordPress is a little different. You don't pay for it, but you host it somewhere else. Hosting fees are where you're hosting your platform or where you're hosting your website on a monthly basis. Okay, that's what you're going to pay monthly. When you get into owning a URL, that is different, okay? You have to own a URL in order for it to point to your website. That usually is paid for annually, okay? So you're going to be paying for a couple things here. Some of them are included in these things. I know Wix offers you a free URL for a year, and then every year after that, they charge you for that URL. When you can go to GoDaddy, for example, and buy a URL there, and then transfer it to Wix or Weebly or WordPress. But you're buying it separately. So I think that sometimes confuses people. They're like, well, I bought this URL, so doesn't that give me a website? It's like, no, you still have to pay for the hosting of the website and the platform it's going to be on. So that's really important to think to when you're looking for these, kind of look for those kind of deals. Like, does Weebly offer a free URL for a year so that I'm only paying, you know, I'm getting something for free for a year, and then I can sort out, you know, how much it's going to cost me after that. So keep that in mind.
Nope, that's exactly what I was going to say. So thank you. I think Michael brings a good point. I tend to encourage clients, if you're building a website through Wix or one of these and you can get your domain and stick with them for hosting, it's easier to have one place to go for all your web than having GoDaddy have my domain and I'm hosting through Wix and I've got then 2 bills coming in and trying to keep track. I encourage folks to do that, but also there's a lot of deals out there. They want your business. So take a look at that as well. And then you can weigh which, you know, direction you want to go. Now, Jen asked a question, Michael, on what do we think about free Google sites and how do we feel about those for people who want to just generate more of a brochure and an info page? I'll tell my opinion and I'll let you tell yours because we may have 2 totally different opinions here. But I don't like the free Google sites because you don't have control necessarily over your domain. To me, if I go out to a website and also like with Wix and those, they all have free platforms. I always encourage people to pay for even the basic one because you want your domain to be your domain. You don't want it to be wix.com/Ted's Car Wash. You want it to be, yeah. So with the Google free sites, you're going to end up having it be not a domain that is your name. So if it's Ted's Car Wash, you're not going to have it be tedscarwash.com or .net. It's going to end up being the Google forward part / your business name. And to me, that from a client or customer standpoint, doesn't instill a lot of confidence in me in that business. Like, are they really going to be around very long because they really don't have a domain that's theirs? So I encourage people to even build a very simplistic site through like a Wix, super easy to do. And like Michael said, our centers are here to help. We can't build the site for you, but we can definitely walk you through it and answer your questions or review something that you've built. I do a lot of website reviews. People will send me their domain, maybe it's in their testing site and say, hey, could you look this over and see if I'm missing anything? And I'll give them feedback. And I know Michael does the same thing. So I think that's really good. Yes, I know that they do allow you to get a domain because Jen said for $11 a year, you can get your own domain and attach it. I don't know. I still think a standalone gives you more control. But Michael, what do you think about that?
Yeah, and I think it depends on where you're at. You know, if you get anything, I will just explain that anything that is free is not yours. Okay, these companies are, I mean, that's their company. So if they have the Googles in the name of the website and the URL, that's their property as far as they're concerned because you're not paying for it. So keep that in mind. I think some of these things are fine to use them, but I also think you need to go out and try them. And I recommend that you do use free sites initially just to try it to see, because you may think, oh, this Google platform is great. And then you go in and you start trying to edit it and do it and it pigeonholes you into something and then you don't like it. So, you know, that's why I say it's always best to try 3 or 4 of these to see which one that really works for you. Don't be in a huge hurry, you know, take a day and try a couple different ones and say, hey, was this easy for me to build this page? Did it look the way I wanted it to look? Or did they tell me it's going to look exactly the way they want it to look because they gave me a template and I can't manipulate anything on the template? So I think it's always good to just try it before you buy it type of thing. But again, if it's free and it stays free, and not only that, I think the car rental company or the car companies have done a great job in making you advertise their brand to everybody because they have it on the back of your car. Well, do you really want to advertise Google for Google and Wix for Wix? Or do you want to advertise your brand, which is why you get your own URL without theirs in it? And I think that's important for you to kind of do. And it makes it easy for you to market. You know, you pick a domain that's close to what you're using and how you're using it. And then you can incorporate that into your marketing materials as well. So.
No, hopefully that answered your question, Jen. Not that we're saying no to the Google thing. It just has to be the right situation. But I think Michael made a great analogy there with the car rental places or car companies. Hadn't thought about that, but you're right. you know, do you want to advertise your business or theirs? And I
I'm
think
gonna
this-
try to figure out how to charge those car companies that I'm driving around with
There
their
you
logo on the back of my car.
There you go. There's other platforms too that are out there. We just mentioned kind of the 4 bigger ones there, but there's Squarespace, which is not related to Square. I found that out in a full room at a national conference. Weebly is the Square website, so don't make the mistake that I did. So Squarespace is totally different. GoDaddy is another platform. Homestead. They all have a little bit different element to them. So again, it's like Michael said, sit down, you know, after you know what you want your website to do, and you know, the kind of what you need, then go out and look at these different platforms and start to rate them. Say, you know, Wix allows me to do an easy drag and drag, which, you know, I have no website experience, but this looks kind of fun, you know, and then, you know, you can look at another platform and go, oh, well, this one offers this, or I'm on Square, so I'm going to take a look at Weebly because it has a better integration and I can keep everything flowing simple. So those are all things you need to think about, but these are some other platforms that are worth mentioning. And Michael's actually mentioned. Go ahead.
This is and I'm going to explain that this is just a very super small list. There are thousands of these guys out there that do it. And I will have to say that I'm going to probably mention to people too that if you're using someone else to build your website, you want to ask this question of what platform they're using. The worst thing that could happen is that that person dies in a car accident and you have no way to get into any of these things. So you need to kind of have if you're having somebody else do the work for you, you kind of need to have at least some control. So if something would happen, you would be able to get to those things and they would be in your name. I've had a lot of clients go out and spend $6,000 or $7,000 on a website, and then they found out that that person purchased their domain name and now they're not doing business with them, but that person owns the domain name, and it's become a legal nightmare for everybody involved. And so, you know, I always say especially if you're not going to do a DIY thing, to ask those people that you're having do it, what are you building my platform in? Will I have access to it? Will I have ownership of it? Those are things that you should probably, before you even look at platforms, if you're
make
not
sure you're
going to
made
do a
administrator.
DIY.
Yeah, make sure you're made administrator so that you can log in at any time as well. And Michael's going to talk more about website platforms next week and how to integrate them specifically for e-commerce. So he'll dive a little bit deeper into some of those. The last thing that I want to mention are just a couple of just things to think about. So majority of these web platforms will build your website in what is called a responsive mode. So if you're looking at your site on a desktop, it scales to fit that. If you're looking at it on a tablet, it will make it fit that, or a phone. Just keep in mind that over 50% of online traffic is from mobile, and that's going up dramatically every year. So one tip though, and I just had this happen to me, I was sharing it with Michael yesterday. I did a website for a nonprofit, built it, had them proof it, and I got an email back, and the gentleman said, the site looks great. However, on my phone, the menu covers the whole front page. Well, what I did not do, and I should know that, is that I needed to go in and tweak some things in the mobile version. So a lot of these will allow you to change up things for mobile versus your desktop. And we'll make it so that the hamburger, which is those 3 little lines, they call that a hamburger, is up in the upper right-hand corner is your drop-down menu. So you click that and your menu appears. Well, I didn't hit the right switch to have that happen. So make sure as you're building it, that you're also looking at it in those different views. And usually they're an icon that you can click on and see those. Also, you can go ahead.
Can I interrupt just a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
Somebody mentioned that Google does the mobile one, I think, and they do mobile first. I think that's great. It's really good if you're it's good if you're a brick and mortar and you're a restaurant or those, because everybody's got their mobile phone out, they're trying to find you and that kind of stuff. If you're a person who doesn't want people, you know, you're a consultant, I don't know how much mobile you're going to want, because I mean, of course you're going to want your phone to be or your website to be mobilely accessible, but it's not imperative for your business for people to find you because, hey, maybe I'm a consultant from a house. I don't want you coming to my house for sure with your mobile device in front of you finding my address. So I think, again, look at going back to your goals. What are your goals of this particular site? Filling out forms on mobile can be a bear for some people. So if you're asking people to fill out a form, sometimes that doesn't translate as nicely and slickly as you'd like it to be. So keep those things in mind. I mean, looking at your goals, you're going to want to check both and make sure they work, but you're also going to want to be like, what's the majority of my audience? And if it's getting people to come to my brick and mortar store, you got to have your site's got to be extremely mobile friendly.
Mobile friendly can be tough though for the senior population. My mom is elderly. She's in her 80s and she has arthritis, terrible. And she has a smartphone, but it's really hard for her to fill out those apps or those forms. And she has a lot of doctor's appointments these days. And they all want her to register off her phone before she comes in. And it's almost impossible for her with her fingers to do that. And she doesn't have a computer. She's one of those rare beasts, which makes Facebook fun for us family members because we can say stuff and not have to worry about mom following
Looking you
up
up on
later.
Facebook.
Yeah, like where are you going? Yeah. Anyway, but so we usually when we go in, we tell them right up front, we need to register. We're gonna have to use your tablet. And yes, she's in the process of buying a tablet right now, so she can have the bigger space. But keep that in mind too, with who your audience is, and whether that's going to be applicable for them. Real quick, I want to mention that the SSL certificates are a growing trend for security on your website. Highly recommend that you do that. Used to be back in the day, it would encrypt, well, and it still does, it encrypts information like credit cards and like social security numbers if it's a job application. But a lot of like Square and PayPal and that encrypts the credit cards. So that's not as necessary today for that. However, it does help your site from being hacked. So I encourage you, just from a security measure, to take a look at adding an SSL certificate. Most of those web platforms offer it. A lot of them, I know several of them that build them in for free. So to, make sure that you're looking at that. That's where it's locked up in the corner. You can see that. And the last thing is when you're building your site, make sure that it's intuitive, right? Maybe have a couple of people after you build it go and tell them that you want them to find something, like whether it's a product on your site or a manual or something, and have them go out and move around your site because you know it so well, but they may not. And you want to make sure that your online visitor has a great experience because it reflects back on your brand and ease of doing business with you. So I make that suggestion. I think that is all we have. We can open it up for questions. We're right at 8:30. We did well there. I appreciate those that popped in and asked the questions along the way. I like that format a lot better. This is both Michael and my contact information. And if you have any questions, maybe you want to ask something a little bit more in depth than what you felt you could do this morning, feel free to reach out to us. The North Central Iowa SBDC Center serves 13 counties. Many of you may be familiar with Kimberly Tiefenthaler, who is our regional director. She's lives right there in Carroll. We also have an office in Carroll. She's going to be your hostess next Wednesday when Michael's talking e-commerce platforms. But reach out to our center and we can do a website review for you, kind of a website audit. We can do that on your social media as well. We can answer specific questions. As Michael said earlier too, if you're building something in Wix and you have a question, reach out to me or to Michael. And, we can help answer those questions. We just can't build your website for you, even though sometimes it would be fun for us to be able to do that, but we can definitely provide guidance and assistance, or even if you're working on your content or you're struggling with what you want your goal for the site to be, we can help walk you through some questions to help you kind of stay focused and on track. So, Michael, do you have any closing comments for
No, I think it's great. Our services are free, guys, so.
Yeah. All right. Any questions? I'm glad to the person that just posted that you found the information of value. So I'm glad that you joined us this morning and feel that way. So thank you for that.
And thank you guys for hosting too.
Yeah, we appreciate the opportunity to jump on, and these are fun. Michael and I enjoy doing these presentations, so I think we're in for some really good ones over the course of the next few weeks. And again, just to reiterate, next week Michael's going to be tackling website platforms and how to integrate e-commerce. Then on March 17th, I'm going to talk all about Google and claiming your business and some of the cool things that they offer. Michael and I are going to tag team it again on the 24th of March. We're going to talk about, do you know where your customers are? And that's really important to know who they are and where they are so you can be there as well. And then Michael on the 31st is going to tackle, I have a Facebook business page, now what? And he'll go through helping you figure out some things that you can do with your Facebook business page. And then we wrap up our digital marketing series on April 7th with one of my favorites at Square, Martin. He's going to talk about the tools that Square provides to help you run your business, even when it's not business as usual, which has been pretty much this last year. So we'll talk a lot about the different things that Square can do to help make your business more streamlined. So fantastic. I think that's all we have for today.
Guys.
Lauren, thank you. And thank you to Chris and Rick for inviting us to partner with you guys on this series. So thank you.
Thank you both. All right. Have a good day, everybody.
Great day, guys.